Jessica, thanks for coming back on the show. A lot to get to today.
There's a lot going on
A
this
lot
week.
going on. All right. Well, the Senate has sent the bill to release the Epstein files to the president's desk. He says he's going to sign it. I guess the first thing I just want to ask you is like, you've been covering this intimately for a while. How do you think it was handled?
Horribly.
Why?
Well, I think the initial rollout, first of all, I think that the case is so convoluted that not too many people in the country even understand it. And that goes for some of these politicians. And so I think there's a lot of misconceptions and it was built into something that maybe it's not. And so everybody, there's general confusion about what the files are. Some people think there's a list of clientele and that it's cabal, ripping kids off the streets and they're hiding in underground tunnels and stuff. So it's been really hard to try and translate what I've learned, and my opinions have changed throughout. But I think the initial, this was something that Republicans ran on. They were going to expose the files and that it's been used as a political football. But now that it's here on the desk, it's maybe not what people were led to believe. So, how do you wrangle a rabid media and misconstrued public perception to deliver what these files are? And of course, I have a different take on it because I was at Ghislaine Maxwell's trial, and that is not been properly translated either.
So, what do you think? Like, let's start before we get to her. Let's start with the files. What is it that you think maybe the top few things that the American people don't fully get or appreciate about this case?
I guess the best way that I can explain it now is that the closer I've got and the more sources I've spoken to, this is something that was mangled by fictional accounts by some of the victims. And the reason the story is so webbed and confusing is because some of the victims were also co-conspirators. So, there's a lot of internal suing. Some of the victims sue some of the victims. They were acting as co-conspirators, but the problem is, again, not every victim is equal. So yes, there was young girls who showed up and they were disgusted by this pervert who it was very sort of clinical, these 45-minute massages, and they made 300 $400, and they left. They never came back. So you'll never hear from those girls. What we're hearing from right now is women who were, the women on TV right now were college aged, paid for sex, traveling the country, traveling the world actually on these yachts and private planes, and they've made millions of dollars from the Epstein fund, but now they're revamped as victims of rape. So to try and translate that for the American public is not a popular opinion, but I think the files are really maybe more. I think it comes down to maybe Jeffrey Epstein was a rich man in Palm Beach who was surrounding himself with beautiful young women as an incentive to get other people, interested in his lifestyle. And I don't know that I don't think people were coming to him and signing off and having sex with girls. He wasn't like a pimp. So
But
I
so
don't know, there's a clientele list.
when you say that some of these victims are co-conspirators, I'm confused because it's the first time I've heard that. There were a bunch of women standing behind Marjorie Taylor Greene and Tom Massey the other day. Are those women? So I don't understand. I've sort of maybe put everyone into the victim bucket because I think if you're
Well, I think
peddling
that's what
around for
everybody's
sex,
done.
right? But why you're using different? Like I'm trying to understand because I believe that if you're treated inappropriately or pimped out for sex, that's a horrible thing. And then you're saying that might entirely be the case, or that some of these people are quote co-conspirators. Just go down that for a second and explain that.
Well, that absolutely is the case, and I that's not really a debatable aspect of this. Virginia Giuffre was doing what Ghislaine Maxwell is accused of doing, and there was a lot of these women who wanted to take the place of Ghislaine Maxwell because she was, well, a lot of them were actually in love with Jeffrey Epstein. And so it's this twisted dynamic, right? And it's not, none of it's great. Like none of these people are excusable, but these women were college age, and the stories and the original police reports and the depositions have changed dramatically through the years. So unless you've tracked that closely, you're not going to see it. And media is not going to go in and question women. That's just like, we're not allowed to do that. And I've obviously been criticized for years because I just think the believe women thing is not helpful to the justice system or anyone. But yes, so they would bring in other girls, and at her Ghislaine Maxwell's trial, we saw proof of that. So it's confusing because the journalist I've been promoting, Jay Beecher, he has audio of Carolyn is one of the victims who testified. She was underage. Now she was brought in by Virginia. So her mother is furious because Virginia's been sainted in the eye of the public while Ghislaine Maxwell's been demonized. So it's just a case of where this isn't a black or white thing. It's not clear cut victim and villain. But if you try to relay that to the public, it's not easy.
All right, guys, if you need a great night's sleep, do what I do every single night. Use Beam's Dream Powder. Right now, the ultimate cyber discount is available to my listeners only, 50% off, the best deal going that you are going to thank me for, because you're going to sleep better. You're going to stay asleep, wake up feeling refreshed. Go to shopbeam.com/Spicer. Use code Spicer for 50% off for a very, very limited time during their cyber sale. Shopbeam.com/Spicer, code word Spicer, 50% off. So, do you blame the media then for not giving us the full story or explaining the roles of some of these individuals?
I usually always blame the media, yeah, because to me, I look at, when I went into this case, I was fine to believe whatever. I had no preconceived conception of any of this. I didn't really know a lot about it. I thought I was going to show up at this trial and there would be bombshell, explosive information and clientele. I thought this was it. We were going to get the files. But as I've gotten deeper into it, I've realized that media has really selected a narrative. And I mean, Sean, this is the case with all of these trials that I'm invested in. It's like one popular documentary decides the narrative. And if you go against that, or if you question the other side of it, which the art of journalism should be finding the other side of the story. What did we overlook? And that's what I've done with this case. And so it's been really hard to get people to understand my point, but I have the facts. Like if people are following, these aren't opinions. This has all been documented, just overlooked by media.
So what do you think is going to come out in this release of emails? Like what else are we going to find?
Well, what do you think? I'm going to ask you, what do you think we found so far? What do the files look like so far to you? What do the emails tell us about any of it?
I mean, to me, it sounds just like a lot of, first of all, the emails that have come out recently don't seem to say much. It's, does this guy know anything, or this guy's a jerk, or like, it seems like a lot of
gossip,
like eighth grade back and forth about who's a bigger jerk. So I don't know. That's why I'm asking you, because to be honest with you, this idea that like, oh, the dog hasn't hunted, or something about Bubba. And when I've asked people, they'll say, oh, that's not what you think it is, or that's just, and by the way, we can't believe Epstein. So that's why I'm kind of like, what else are we going to find out? Because maybe you're right. I have this narrative in my head. This guy, Epstein's a total perv, creep bag that, had dudes that he wanted to do business with, getting connected to him so that he could pimp out young girls. That's the narrative I have in my head anyway.
So I think I think you nailed it so far. That's what I'm seeing too. We're getting these emails and they're trying to spin headlines out of them, but it's essentially a bunch of rich guys gossiping about other rich guys. And like, should we have a Peter Thiel over for dinner? What's so-and-so doing? Who's he with? Like, who's the girl he brought? Like, it's all a lot of really badly misspelled, like Jeffrey Epstein's grammatical errors. The man could not spell, but
I will say, if you pull my emails out, you're going to find my grammar and my spelling suck too. So if that, unless that's
I was telling
crime.
Mike's always, he's always like worried about his spelling. I was like, I promise you spell better than Jeffrey Epstein, if that makes you feel any better.
I don't think that's going to make him feel better. I think your husband, I think your husband has a lot better qualities to worry about than whether or not his spelling is on par with Epstein.
So no, I think the files, the bombshell they tried to say was Trump said he knew about the girls. It's ridiculous. Everyone in Palm Beach at that time knew about the girls. Jeffrey Epstein, that's what he wanted his reputation to be. He was flaunting it. This wasn't secret. He had beautiful young women draped all over the furniture just at parties as like decoration. And I don't know that it's even changed that much. I mean, you go to Palm Beach, you know what it's like. The yacht culture is still, this is a thing. Rich men will have
But isn't
beautiful
there a
women around.
line, Jessica, between like 18-year-olds or I mean, there is a legal like sign of consent. Number one, and number two, there are people that if you're poor that and someone's offering you money and then kind of trafficking. I mean, like to me, there's a line between a consenting adult and somebody who's 17, even 18, which is legal, but I would argue inappropriate to be pimping around young people with the promise of money.
Right, and I agree with you. And but the point that's going missed is Jeffrey Epstein was the man so far that we have discussed. Like the only evidence we have right now is that Jeffrey Epstein was having sexual relations with underage girls. Most of them that I am aware of were college age and legal. But yes, there was underage girls, and I. But he's the one who he is the pervert here. He's dead.
Right.
So to say that Ghislaine Maxwell needs to serve his a 20-year sentence to me is insane. You can't say that she's not guilty or she's there's no sex trafficking and there's no blackmail, but she's going to serve a 20-year sentence for the man who, in my eyes, she's sitting there for Jeffrey
Is there
Epstein.
any
He's
evidence
dead.
that she knew about? I mean, because I think the one thing that we can all agree on is that if you're under 18, which is the legal age of consent, I think in almost I think there are some southern states that allow 16, but the point is, I would argue anything under 18 should be general agreement that that's off limits. And so, does Ghislaine Maxwell, was she part of that of the underage girls in getting them into the system?
Well, I've never maintained that she's innocent in this. I think she was desperate to please him. I think she was madly in love with him, and I think he manipulated her, and I think he was terrible to her. And I think, a lot of these victims we were encouraged to overlook as imperfect victims, right? Because they did come and bring other girls. They repeated the cycle and brought other women in. But with Ghislaine, you weren't allowed to ask any questions because to me it kind of made sense that she grew up in the household that she did under, serving powerful men in these elite circles, and then she went on to do serve the same role for Jeffrey Epstein. I'm not excusing her. I'm just saying I understand that all of this is complicated. And why are we making certain excuses for some women but not other? If we're going to have the conversation about consent and all of this, like I think we should be honest about it. And no, I do think of course, I think she knew what he was into, but she also left, she tried to get away from him, and nobody ever covers that part of her life where she tried to actually get out of his orbit and he was really manipulating her. But there's women who are protected in that sweetheart deal who are living in mansions right now who overtook the role of Ghislaine Maxwell. So I'm just saying, is that fair? Is that justice? What's fair in this
Right.
case?
So the thing that I find interesting is that, to your point, like when we say everybody knew, I guess the question that comes to my mind is what did everybody know and what's the timeline, right? That's the two other things that are blurry in my mind. When you hanging around with young, attractive women is not a crime, right? And if you're a rich dude, I'm sure that there's countless examples of rich guys, whether it's Palm Beach or Palm Springs, that have a boat or a big, beautiful house and have a ton of young, attractive women hanging around with them. That's maybe creepy, not illegal. So the question that I want to ask you is like, one, what's the timeline? When did we know that he was a scumbag? And when did we know that this was crossing the line into women under 18?
Well, I'm going to say that's probably hard to really know because no one is being honest about their association with Jeffrey Epstein. In my opinion, the smarter approach would have been for, let's use the president as an example. Had he come out and said, I was friends with Jeffrey and Ghislaine, everyone in Palm Beach was, we were all connected in this circle, in this, they were all in this same social circle. It makes sense. I think if everyone was just honest about it, because now you're setting yourself up for everything looks suspicious. If you're saying like, did he send the birthday card? I don't know. It seems like he would send his friend a birthday card. I think had they been honest about it, it doesn't mean that everyone was aware of what he was doing because even Ghislaine Maxwell in that proffer with Todd Blanche, she says this was a progressive thing. This is not the man I met. Like this, his perversities really progressed and they got worse. So I, if we go back, I mean, what we do have documented was Donald Trump and him had a falling out. I think they were very competitive, and I think there was a real estate deal that poisoned, it was bad blood from there. So now they're enemies and competitive enemies. They want to take each other down. And he kicked him out of Mar-a-Lago because he was hitting on one of his staffer's daughters, right? So I mean, we're going back, what was it, 30? Is this 30 years? Was it 30 years ago? So you're having modern media and like 20-year-old kids interpret what Palm Beach was in the 90s. And so it's just people aren't really discerning enough to say what is the crime here. To me, the criminal was Jeffrey Epstein. I don't think there was a huge trafficking ring. And I think that's what we've been led to believe. And now it's really hard to reel it back in and try and you know, get the news out and the files out because it's not what people want. They want the most salacious version of it. And now the Trump administration has done a horrible job at rollout. I think they should set a timeline up and walk people through it's not going to go away. And so when there's a lapse in information and evidence, people are going to fill it with conspiracy and, assumptions.
Yeah, and that's what I've argued for some time. Just get it all. Sit in the briefing room. Here's everything that we have. Here's victim statements that we can't release for obvious reasons. Walk you
Yes.
through it, because to me, you're right. Like, I'll admit, I don't. For a lot of individual, I just don't find this that as much interesting. I know why people care, and I cover it for obvious reasons because there's a House vote on it, and the president's going to sign it. But I'm not sure I really want to go back in time and relitigate when somebody crossed the line to being a pervert. I want the victims to get justice. And that's the thing I want to ask you about. Like you mentioned this fund. Like, talk to me when members of Congress and other people say, we want these victims to get justice. You mentioned some people living in a house. Like, what's this Epstein fund? Like, who's getting money from it? How do you get money from it? Because when you're talking about this, that's the first time I'm hearing about like people living high on the hog.
Yeah, that's the problem is there's not a lot of media who's helping me out with this story, but these are the facts. And this has come from talk to many lawyers and people involved on all sides, the Maxwell side, the Epstein side, all of it, as well as the victims. One of my sources is a victim who was involved in that scene for 5 years. Now she has a very different account of it. She said, we were not kept in cages. They treated us very nice. We were gifted fancy things and we traveled the world and we went to fancy parties. And so she has a very different account of what Jeffrey Epstein was. But it just seems like there's only one version that's accepted, and it's a forced victim of rape. That's not what I saw in the trial. That's not what I've seen in the evidence. And to understand it we can't even blame Marjorie Taylor Greene. I think she's making a huge mistake, but I think it comes from misinformation. They want to believe that it's a cut and dry case. It's victim and villain, and it's not. But so the victim fund is a really, really tricky thing because it was set up to pay out these victims, and the worse the abuse, the more money you got. So if you were on the island as a 24-year-old and you were there willingly taking money, that story is not going to profit you. That's not going to profit. So now if you're a rape victim of Jeffrey, you get money. If you're also touched by Ghislaine Maxwell, you get more money. So you have to understand there's corruption at every level. Even the prosecuting lawyers who are supposed to be the good guys in all these documentaries, they're selecting victims who will serve the narrative. And because Epstein's dead, they refocused everything on Ghislaine Maxwell. She was not named in any indictments prior to his death. All of it shifted because they needed a living body to sue, convict, and profit from.
When
So
I talk, when I was talking to Alan Dershowitz the other day, I asked him point blank, do you think that she deserves a pardon or a commutation or what have you? And it was funny because he looked at it very analytically and said, if you're convicted of these crimes, this is what you'd get. And this is where you should be, meaning you should be in a minimum security prison based on historical precedent of where someone of that level would go. And he said exactly what you were saying. He said, basically, she is serving his sentence. So if President Trump
I
came
saw that
out,
clip.
yeah, if President Trump said to you, you've covered this case. You know her. You've read through all the court documents. Should I commute her sentence? What would you tell him?
I would. I really wish I could sit down and talk to him about it because I don't think, I really genuinely don't believe anyone in politics right now understands the story. And I think he does. He knows exactly what this was. And I do think he was friends with Ghislaine Maxwell, and I think he likes her. That's why he won't trash her. So it's no
Did
secret
they
that I'm
know
in
each other
favor.
well? Did they know each
Yeah.
other?
Yeah, because she was good friends with Ivana. And but she was good friends with everyone. She was good friends with Mary Kennedy. She knew Bobby Kennedy. Ghislaine knew everyone. And the problem from the start was the lies. Just if everyone would have come out and said, we liked her, we were friends with her, we didn't know what was going on behind closed doors, it would be a whole different story. But it's the buildup that really has tainted everything. But yes, it's no secret I'm in favor of a pardon. I don't think she should be in jail for 20 years. I think she served time. She spent 2 years in solitary confinement, which is torturous. And I don't I don't believe the narrative about her. I don't think like I said, I've never called her innocent or tried to excuse her role in this. I'm just saying I don't agree with the way her story's been told, and I would absolutely support a pardon or commutation for her. I think she served time, and the other women are all cleared and living free under his that agreement. The government broke that agreement to make sure they had somebody to convict because they need a face behind, justice. They need to show justice served.
But I think, as I said earlier, one of the narratives is that a lot of these victims were young, underage girls being sort of trafficked. Is that not the case, or is it? I mean, again, is it like, oh well, there's only three of them, or is it no, there were none of them, or is it yeah, there were a lot, but I mean, like, well, I that to your point, like, I think a lot of us have bought into what we've been told through the mainstream media about who she is and her complicity in this.
Right. And so that's covering her trial really taught me everything I needed to know moving forward because it showed me that I couldn't trust mainstream media. We all sat in that trial, and I think majority of journalists agreed. I don't know that they thought she could be convicted on the evidence provided, but that's not what they wrote, and that's not what they were allowed to wrote. I was right. I was the only one writing what we all kind of concluded. But it's just, I mean, if there's so many underage women, why are they not on the cover of the New York Times and standing behind Thomas Massey? Why is it all women who are photographed in these islands as college age girls who were there for years? I know it's not popular to say that if you board the yacht 25 times, you might not be a victim, but at a certain point, we have to be honest about these things because I think it takes away from the real idea of trafficking. It's like we're manipulating these terms. To me, trafficking is children who are ripped off the streets against their will and placed in captive and tortured, and terrible things happen, which I just talked to Tim Ballard, and you know him, and the things he sees are horrors. Okay, these are horrors that you can't even begin to understand. That is not what we saw in Jeffrey Epstein. It's not, like I said, it's not great. And there was underage victims, I understand, but the overall narrative, I don't think is factual.
So obviously, I read your newsletter all the time, and the in-depth reporting, the recordings, I mean, the firsthand accounts, which I think are, to your point, important. But there's a lot of people out there, like, I would say, journalistically grifting off of this story, claiming to be experts. Is there anyone that, like, whether it's Michael Wolff or anyone else, that you'd say, if you read them, then that's your fault for sucking? I mean, like, I look at anything Michael Wolff says and just immediately discount it.
But I'm still learning that lesson because I didn't really know who Michael Wolff was. So when he started putting all this out, I would text my friends like, "Oh my gosh, I didn't know this." And I had to, again, it's so hard to get the facts right now as a normal person. I mean, we spend all day reading news and stuff. But like, think about if you're a normal American, you get home at 6 o'clock at night and you just want to know what's going on. It is almost impossible to know who Jeffrey Epstein was and what all of this madness is. So, of course, with any of the stories now, there's a lot of grifting going on. And it's infuriating because we already have mainstream that has sanitized the version that they want. And now you have these grifters online who just want to make these like 2-minute viral clips, but there is no I mean, even Thomas Massey was standing up there explaining how Epstein's orbit worked, and it was completely inaccurate. So it's really hard to get control of the truth here. And I mean, I've almost wanted to give up, but I've spent so much time on it. I feel like, I can't because it's infuriating to watch the spin. And Michael Wolff is so great. I mean, are we pretending like he wasn't Epstein's best friend?
I know.
Like,
But the guy's
like
giving
he's
him PR advice. I mean, he was literally like, here's how you should play this.
I also love that he's like, and then this happened on the plane. And we're like, so you were on the plane. Like he's like telling on everybody what they're doing on the plane or in the parties. And I'm like, so you were at the parties and on the plane. Like it's just, I mean, it's comical in some aspect.
All right. I want to talk about Maha, but I have two more quick questions
Okay.
and then move on. Do you think that there are more people? We saw Larry Summers, former Treasury Secretary, close advisor to a lot of Democrats, step back from public life even further today, this morning, saying he's stepping off the board of OpenAI. From what your reporting has shown you, do you think that we're going to see more public figures, elected or not, get caught up in this and have to explain their involvement with Epstein as these files are released?
I think it has the potential to be really, really messy moving forward because the truth has been mangled. And so any mention at all, I mean, if so you went to an Epstein, they're trying to say, oh, Jared Kushner had Epstein over to a party and he went. So we're now people are implicated just for associating with him. And so I did get, when Trump said he didn't want to just throw the files out to the wind because he thought it would incriminate a lot of innocent people. That is the truth. I understand. He's right because we don't have media is so warped that the truth is nobody has a good grasp on what this was. And so any implication at all. I mean, they ran with headlines that Trump was in a kitchen with girls in bikinis. Like that was the headlines everywhere. So yeah, I think you're going to see step downs and stuff, but I don't know that it's just and fair because we don't have a media we can trust to really decipher what is criminal or.
But I do think that there's a difference between, I know a lot of people, because, I've been in Washington for a while. I know a lot of scumbags. There's a difference between being a scumbag, being creepy, and doing illegal things. And I think that's seems to me the big question is it's like, I saw Katie
Yeah.
Couric answering these questions the other day because she was at an event with George Stephanopoulos at his house. And one of the questioners was like, well, you didn't see all these women. And she's like, well, I guess I should have known better. And so where's the line between knowing that someone's like, hey, this is a little too far? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like you walk out of a room sometimes, maybe it's someone double dealing something or whatever. And you're like, wow, that was over the line.
Right. I mean, it's just so right now we're just going through and picking through social settings that we have proof of and it happened 30 years ago. I don't know what we don't know what any of these people knew. And unless we find evidence of crimes, I don't know. I mean, are you going to be implicated because you went to a party or you invited Jeffrey Epstein? I mean, he was an investor in all of these young visionaries. So there was a lot of incentive to be friends with Jeffrey Epstein. He had a
Well, it's like
private
Harvey
plane.
Weinstein, right? I
Yeah,
mean,
I mean, that's just, yes. So these people get to where they're at and they become, prominent figures that are generous and they have things to offer people. They want money. I mean, Epstein donated to everyone who was up and coming then.
so do you think Prince Andrew actually has something to hide, or does he just not want to discuss it? I mean, a guy like him, same thing as Larry Summers. He's walking away, walking away, walking away, settlement. But is it like maybe he crossed the line, or there was some? I mean, that because again, I get it. Like you look at someone like Alan Dershowitz, right? He fought back and he made it very clear,
Yeah.
I'm innocent. I got the receipts, and everyone now pretty much agrees that he was absolutely right. He was falsely
Yeah.
accused. Whereas Prince Andrew, from what we know, it looks like settle, 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 back away, back away.
You know what? I will be honest. I don't know what I think about Andrew. I don't. I know that Virginia was of age when he was accused of sleeping with her. So she was legally of age in the UK. Again, not great. But I don't know if he I don't know actually what I think about Andrew. I have strong opinions on everyone else. I knew Alan Dershowitz was innocent, and I'm glad that he fought back because he was the first to say, "No, I want to go to trial." And she she can't go to trial because she's not a credible witness. And I know that sounds harsh, but that's the truth. And I was really happy that he refused to back down. Now, someone like Andrew really couldn't go to trial. You cannot be a royal family or a member of the royal family and bring all this chaos and spectacle to the United States. So that was not an option for him. He gave her the payout, which, by the way, she did not donate, like she said. So her charity was empty. There was nothing was donated. There's a lot of weird stuff with where the finances went. But that's the thing, is this became a profitable angle, is to say, because people are terrified. It is radioactive. People who would defend Jeffrey Epstein or Ghislaine Maxwell you can't, you're done.
Well, if you enjoyed this content, make sure to like this video, subscribe, and click the notification bell to get more.